And she isn't still sedated. That's the best part. That's incredible. So these stories are so amazing. They're so different from each other. We'll go backwards this time. And I want to know, what made you choose this film? One, why now? Why make it? Why? What was it about the story, or what moved you? And why now versus working on something else in the meantime and saving this for later, or having this done years before? Why is this the right time for this? And what made you want to push this forward now?
I would love to give an answer that's, talking about how there's all these bills being legislated against women and people who aren't straight cis white men, but that's really not the truth. 2020, I'm primarily an actress, been an actress for a long time, and 2020 happened, the industry shut down, and I was just feeling like I needed to do something creative. I stumbled upon the location, the really creepy once building on the beach, and ideas just started flowing through me. I wrote it very quickly and turned to my boyfriend, and he was like, let's make it. And so we just made it.
And he wasn't terrified?
No, he wasn't terrified.
He's a keeper then,
yeah, we're pretty dark, so, yeah, I think for me, I'd been itching to transition into directing for a long time, and the industry shutting down and not being able to audition kind of just pushed me there.
I work in film and television as a production accountant, and I guess since I was like in the second grade, I've always wanted to write, direct, and produce. So when I got into film and television, one of the reasons why I became a production accountant is because I wanted to learn how the money was being spent. Mm-hmm. But year after year after year, I wasn't making my own films. And I thought because I was close to the producers, I could give them all these ideas. And sure, they would listen, but nothing ever came of it. So my friend Elizabeth Ellerman, who produces a lot of my stuff with me, she's not here, she got fed up with me, sitting there crunching the numbers, wishing I was directing my own stuff. And she says, go take a class at SVA, go take a class at NYU. So, not to be so lengthy, I went and I took a class at SVA and NYU, and I shot 5 films. And I wanted to go into horror, and one of my producers, not producers, but one of my teachers, Sal Bistrino, said, no horror for you. You talk too much. Do something social. And I said, but no, I want to do horror. I want to do horror. He was like, no, my gut is telling me you got to do something social. So I made a bunch of social films. And Color of Love is just one of 5. And no one wanted to edit it. People told me that they were just test runs. And back in March, my nephew graduated from Hunter with his degree in film, and he got on my case and was like, what are you gonna do with those films? What are you gonna do with those films? And that was the kick I needed, and a friend edited them all, and I took a shot, and I submitted it here, didn't think anything would come of it, and I sit amongst you all, and I'm honored, so thank you.
That's laid plan.
So I love the specificity of the question you asked about, like, why not have this on the back burner or work on something else, because Wendy was actually on our back burner for a couple years. My husband, Matt Steiner, who also plays Mr. Hansen, who's here, wrote the film. And he wrote it before we ever started collaborating or writing together, and it just kind of sat until, we were talking about trying to film some stuff, and we brought up Wendy, and Matt was like, oh, I should film a scene as Mr. Hansen so I have it for my reel. And I was like, hold on, we need to make this entire film. I'll take nothing less. And something that really pushed it forward was that we were able to go to my alma mater where I had graduated 10 years prior, a performing arts high school and middle school in Wilmington, Delaware, and we worked with their real 8th grade theater majors. So it just the timing of that class with this film and our ability to have access to the school, and really shortly after we shot it, all the anti-LGBTQ youth legislation in Florida was starting to be introduced. So so it's been a really important film to be bringing through the festival circuit right now.
Timing is everything.
Yeah.
This is The Coolest Club is my thesis film for City College of New York, so that's when we need to make a film. But I did have that story idea of putting a group of people that is not socially accepted in a place and see how it, like I wanted to write something like that. So The Coolest Club came out, but I really wanted to, like I really like Edgar Wright. I like his style, so I incorporate a lot of his like comedic elements and also the comic, like the cartoonish into the film to make it more vibrant. But yeah, that is the bit. I actually forgot the question. I usually forget, but I think I answered the question, right? Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, we did the production. It was very quick. It was written in like late spring, and we shot in the summer last year. I realized I'd never really done a lot with like femininity and gender, so I just really want to delve right into that, especially with everything happening last year with like women's rights and everything going on. So I was like, I want to do a feminine project. I want like an all-women cast and crew, and like, I don't think a man even saw it until the final cut was exported. So it was just fun to delve deep into there.
Amazing. Great.
Yeah, it was a similar situation of a man did not see it until like the final edit. Because ours is produced as part of the Women's Weekend Film Challenge. For those who may or may not be familiar, it's kind of a program that is geared to getting more women and non-binary people and people of marginalized genders into the film industry. We applied for this program, and we basically, my co-writer and I were accepted, and we were paired together on a team with our incredible director Sarah, who is here. And we were given literally a genre out of a hat, and a prop. So the greeting cards were an assigned prop, and we just had to figure out a script from there. So we basically had 8 hours to sit in a room. It was our second time meeting, and we were paired because we also sent comedy writing samples, and they were like, let's do something gay and sad. And so we did that. We're both like queer women. But yeah, no, we kind of, our category was alternate history, and so we were kind of like, okay, and we had kind of ideated before we even knew the category. We were like, oh, something about like the Fountain of Youth would be fun. And then obviously this was shot last year, so it was like coming off the pandemic, so it was definitely a thing where like the inverse of a thing that is killing a lot of people that is very desirable, but also the dark, but we were like, how do we do this with 3 actors and 80 hours to produce, edit, like the film had to be done. But so we had to get like kind of smaller and smaller in scope and thinking about a very personal, interpersonal story and something that's kind of about in a form of like sort of a toxic relationship and a violent act that is not violent. It is taking away someone's like ability to die. But that was kind of the scope. Kind of a lot of it was production necessity by our incredible producer and our incredible director keeping us in like, okay, we only have this location and this time and 3 actors, so like let's be very efficient and economical in our storytelling, but also just to zero in and like what is the most personal story we could tell about this, like something that would be a giant global event. So yeah.
The inverse.
Yes, 100%. The opposite of a pandemic. It's like eternal life, just being available and something you can choose to get.
But is that a gift or a curse, right?
Yeah, it depends on who you ask.
Well, it depends on whether we're living on Mars like we did earlier this week or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I made Handwritten through paper puppetry, like that very few last seconds of all of those scans are actually real scans of my childhood notebooks and sketchbooks and diaries, all the way from when I was super little. I grew up in New York, and my whole family's still here, and I still hoard all of these random writings that I thought I had no use for, but hoarding helps because one day you will use it decades later. So I scanned those and created these like paper puppetry with paper puppetry through those scans and textures. And yeah, actually, I'm a theater artist. I studied visual art, so I kind of combined all of these skills to make the film. And so this is through Heather Henson's Handmade Puppet Dreams, which is like part of a series of puppet artist commissioned works. And so you'll be able to see it eventually on streaming things. But yeah, I wanted to share it in New York City now. because I made it here, and I think it would be fun to like meet folks who also work in film.
So for the last couple of years, thanks to Grip Camp and CODA, there has been more of a push within the last decade, but especially in the last 3 years, for there to be more of a place, both in front of the camera and behind the camera, for the deaf and disability community. And one of those organizations that have, or I should say endeavors in the industry that have really been prominent is called the Easter Seals Disability Film Challenge, which just celebrated its 10th anniversary in March. My wonderful collaborator, Rachel Handler, whom I hate name dropping it, but you can check her out and you might recognize her from Interview with the Vampire. Not the Brad Pitt one, the more recent one with the guy from Game of Thrones. And has been, along with our two brilliant co-directors, Crystal and Kat, she produces a film every year. And the whole idea is, the one rule that I have is you need to have at least one actor with a disability in front of the camera. It doesn't specifically have to be a film about a disability. And they give you a theme and a list of prompts of like props, costumes, and settings that you need to have at least one of each in, or a small number of that. And Rachel is very clever when she starts writing these scripts and getting her team together, where she's very conscious with the fact that she wants to highlight and celebrate our community as much as possible. And one of the ways she does that is to take an issue and that is very personal and important to our community, and finds a way to correlate that with the theme. So it was very fortuitous that during the time when she was planning last year, we were still in the middle of the pandemic. I'm hard of hearing, so I wound up having to step away because, opaque masks ain't so great when you don't sign and you're a lip reader. Especially on a place like a set, which needs to operate as efficiently as possible. So I was very fortunate that she approached me when we were in the second year of the pandemic, not quite out of the woods yet. And I was like, okay, let's meet. I would love to have a conversation with you about it before I say yes. And the first thing she said to me was, I'm thinking that if you're on my team, I'm going to order clear masks. And I was like, okay, you are brilliant. Tell me more. You probably already have my heart and soul and my signature on a metaphorical contract already. And then the second thing that won me over was she told me she had this idea for a short film. The theme was for that year, 22, was superheroes. So she had this wonderful idea of to do a superhero story with a boy in the foster care syndrome system. And that is a combination I hadn't seen before, especially since she's so committed to prompting her fellow disabled actors up. This film is a person who's a little person, a young boy with cerebral palsy, and herself, an amputee, as the primary cast. And yet, we don't call attention to their disabilities at all. The whole film is about Andy's fears of being moved to a new home and not being wanted, which is something that, because of ableism, deaf and disabled people experience all the time, and yet we're not specifically calling attention to it, but it is there and implied. And I thought it was just a beautiful concept that needed attention, especially in the form of what the story would be, and especially to reach a younger audience that felt like it could use it, especially since, as it's a little cliche, but as the line is in our film, superheroes go through hardships all the time as part of their origin stories, and we all have that power that we can use to vanquish our inner demons and become our best selves.
Amazing. Thank you. when I work with very young filmmaking clients, they'll come to me on their first project and they'll say, what words of advice? Like, I start principal tomorrow, like, what do I do? And I'm like, well, you shouldn't be asking a lawyer what you should do, but I usually tell them, you're going to make 1,000 mistakes, and you're gonna learn from it, and you're gonna move on. And then they say, and the second time I'm gonna be amazing, right? And I'm like, no, you're gonna make 1,000 new mistakes, but you'll not make the first ones. And that's part of the evolutionary process of every person, right? And every endeavor. So my question to you is, what were, let's say, the challenges you faced, whether about the specific project or around the time, because it was a challenging period, and how did you overcome it? How did you creatively think your way out of it? Or not. Maybe you just said, no, I'm just going to walk around this one and leave it there and see where it goes. Any of you, just randomly. Go ahead.
Well, superhero films, of course, are kind of a beast, considered a beast, production value-wise and money and time-wise in cinema. So try making one where you're doing it for a week-long film challenge so you have time, but you only have 2 days scheduled. And you need to figure out how you're going to composite effects, and you are working with children. We did every single costume change you saw in real time on our first day. And most importantly, you need to have action figures as part of the script, and without that, Kaliope, the film won't work. And yet, try not to throw a mention into any Marvel or DC character and yet still have a doll, whether it's a Barbie or an action figure that seems like it could be legit, especially since this was not made for a fair use, meaning made for our class or education environment. So we had a grand array, and fortunately, thanks to collaboration and our really talented production designer, we were all able to keep ourselves in check and work around all of that.
Excellent. I like that. Anyone else?
One of my challenges was interacting with my cast and crew, because first and foremost, I'm a production accountant, so hours equal cents to me. And it was very, very difficult for the crew and the actors to accept the fact that I was a creative counting the pennies and the time. So my first AD was like, I got the clock. I'm like, but no, you're behind. You got money. And the reason why the money became such an issue for me is because in the house we shot in, I was supposed to have it all day Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But when the homeowner came around and met the team, she told me she was uncomfortable. So she would only allow me to have the apartment between the hours of 8 and 8, which threw everything off because my DP came in from California and was excited because he was like, you don't have to pay any money for a hotel. If you got the house for the entire weekend, I'll just stay there. So now Hayden and Fleming can't stay in the house, and now we're losing time. So I had to really manage the time in the sense, and there's just a certain way, I believe, because I actually took acting classes, because working in film and industry, I always heard directors under their breath talk about how they hate working with actors, and I just couldn't comprehend that. How do you hate acting? How do you hate working with actors when they bring the story to life? I mean, I don't care how good the TP is, from my perspective. I don't care how good the script is. The actors are everything. So I took Meisner and Stanislavski. I'm not an actor, but I took it. I don't know how you guys remember those lines, because it was a lot for me. But I took it because I wanted to make certain when I went on set, I would know how to work with these people, especially since none of my actors are actors. the little girl I saw on the train 24 hours before I shot. I thought she was cute, and her mother didn't speak any English, and I said, I need her to be in my film, I need her to be in my film. So I got her, the young man my nephew found, it was one of his friends, and he was terrified. The father figure was one of my producing partners, and I couldn't find a father, and I said, dude, memorize the lines, you're gonna have to do this. So, you know, we wrote, Color of Love was written, casted, and shot in 7 days. Wow. So I guess, to be honest with you, there was a certain energy that I had, and that energy was, I have to get it done. It's one shot, there's no going back. So it was managing a mindset of empathy, because these people came in this innocently to have a good time, because it's supposed to be fun. That's why you call them players. But I had to keep track of the time and the money, because all I kept hearing was cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. So that was the challenge for me.
You manifested and slapped everyone on the back. Anyone else want to add to that?
Well, I had a. Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
My story, it's just really hot in New York in the summer now. Like, we're shot in the summer and it's just starting. Because I used to, I've always lived on the East Coast. I always like to shoot in the summer, but now it's getting hard. And now it's also looking like Mars. So just the logistics of exterior shoots in the East Coast is getting rough.
So what did you do? Did you fans?
No, we just powered through.
Okay.
I mean, we moved it up towards the morning for the exterior shots.
Cold
but it's
drinks.
just so hot. Yeah, just
Water.
Yeah.
The studio didn't have AC, I don't think, so.
Oh. Studio doesn't have AC?
Yeah, we're just opening windows. I don't think it did. And yeah, we were just opening windows and it was rough.
Oh, that must have been terrible on the makeup, huh?
Yeah, we had a really good makeup artist though. She knows stuff real well. I don't understand it, but.
Well, I was going to say I had a similar experience on my previous film where I felt like I was directing, but I was producing at the same time, and I was so focused on time and getting every shot that I realized I didn't allow my actors to really play in the space. I was just like, you got 2 takes and then we're going. And so everyone felt kind of stressed. So when I brought to this film, I wanted to have like a lighthearted environment on set, and then it was my first time working with young actors who they just came to the table with like everything. They were incredible. But yeah, having to keep things light but then also manage 25, 14-year-olds was, you know, a challenge, but we did it.
Perhaps you can share the sedation.
Yeah, right, yeah.
That's amazing. That is insane for 25, 14-year-olds. Okay. All you need is dogs the next time, or cats.
Well, I'm actually a dog trainer, so that's easier than kids.
Oh gosh. Now, for the multi-hyphenates, which hat that you wore, right? Because you wore 2 or 3 or 4 or 17 hats. Which one won most of the time? And do you, in retrospect, appreciate the hat that won, or wish another hat had won for the day? Do I understand the question?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
For me, my internal accountant, she was boss. But I wish my inner creative child would have won over her. But I didn't have, someone said on the last panel how important it is. It's essential to have a team of people who want to see you win. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have a producing team, and this is no slight to them, but I didn't have a producing team who understood what this meant to me. Because this is something I wanted to do since the 3rd grade.
Which is crazy, right?
Okay? Something I wanted to do since the 3rd grade.
Amazing.
When I saw Rudy, I said, Mommy, I want to be behind that. She was like, behind what? I want to be this. And it was a screen. And going through elementary school, junior high school, growing up in a place like Rochester, New York, everyone thought I was crazy. How are you going to get to Hollywood? That's such a much bigger dream than anyone can even, maybe you should think about being a teacher, teach film. I'm like, no, I want to make movies. So to come to New York City and to be able to work behind the scenes and then be motivated each time I'm on someone's set, hoping that would be my crew, hoping that would be my Musco truck. I always just trying to visualize myself in that position. It meant the world to me. So in order for me to get what I got, I had to spend money, and I spent it out of my own pocket. And there was no investor. And there wasn't a GoFundMe or anything like that. So I don't have any regrets, but I do sometimes wonder what it might have become if I could have been more creative with my shots, because I feel that this is more dialogue driven, and I would have liked the dialogue to have been met with art.
Next time.
I think if I make it, I think for me, I put like director and writer and producer's hat on me during the set, but I put a lot of producing side, like putting on my shoulder. But I have amazing like 2 producers that really wanted to help me. I'm really lucky, but I think I think everyone are like, we really wanted to like hold the control of everything during production. So I think what really helped is my producer keep telling me that that goal, just focus on the creative stuff, and other logistic, other problem solving, they can handle it. And I think that's also because now I transition myself doing producing more. I just produced my first feature film, woe to me. But that's also what I tell my director, like, focus on the creative stuff because that is almost like your baby. Focus on that and other things. So that's what I really wanted. If I can go back, I just handle all my things to my producer, and then I can focus more on the creative and writing stuff. So, and also I also want to answer the previous question, the challenging stuff, which I feel like a lot of you guys may resonate with. That is, the challenge is I forgot to film a shot that is really important for the film. And when I did into editing room, and I feel like that will be happening in other films as well. You just forgot one shot that's really important. In order to creative solve that problem, that's the whole comic and all the cartoon come to life. Because in order I need to fix that part, that shot, and then I'm not able to tell the story fully. I need to create like a comic, like a cartoon to make the story flow. So that's a way of creating, solving things, and I'm really grateful for my designer is actually sitting there.
Happy little accident.
I agree with her because there's one shot that I didn't get, and I don't know if you all caught it. The doll, the little girl had painted the face of her doll a lighter shade than herself. And I am so irritated that no one got a close-up shot of that for me, because I don't know if it is enough for the audience to see how the conflict was, how she was internalizing the conflict, because the parents had some unresolved issues with the conflicts that they were dealing with in society. I mean, I even had to go out and buy everybody's wardrobe. So because I was counting the pennies, so I figured I might as well just do it myself.
So you really did strap on an entire movie and just bring it home.
Yeah.
Don't do that again.
If it makes you guys feel any better, because our first day was like super jam-packed with the office scenes, and because we were so focused on the conversation and going back and forth between regular clothes and superhero costumes, and then the setup for the hallway scene, we literally lost like an entire section of fight choreography. Like, it is a testament to our editor and just our incredible team that the lighting and the effects we composited and our actors managed to make like that one cool pose and vanquish the bad guy moment look as cool as it was, because we literally lost like about a good 3 frames because Zip Studios, which was our wonderful host, was like, you are running out of time, we need to close like within an hour. So we had to unfortunately forego that and like rush to the finish line. Which is no fun when you're doing a superhero film, but it worked out. I think that was like our one regret.
Happy little accidents.
For sure.
Ross had it going on.
Oh.
Good. You had one.
Well, I'm just like a multidisciplinary artist in general. Like I studied visual art, and then I started making theater works because I did like performance installation. That was narrative, and then I needed stage, and then for the pandemic, I was like, well, live performance is not possible, so let's make a film. And one of the first films I did, it was supposed to be a live piece for Park Avenue Armory, and then the pandemic happened, everything got shut down. So I made a film out of paper puppets. I was like, I could just print my actors. The whole thing was at home, and it was a very similar format but different aesthetic, because all like archival photos, that one, and this one's like all hand illustrated paper. But so I did that film. I was really happy with it, and then I went out to LA, got a bigger budget, and made like a longer short with humans, not puppets. And that was a totally different ball game. It was like pre-vax, like everyone was getting tested. I was like first time on a set, like, and yeah, in that time I noticed like, oh shoot, like my director hat or whatever, you know, it's like, it's like falling off because there's just so much to manage logistically, and like from that experience I was really burned and was like, and it's still in post, it's forever in post, that one, but for this one I was like, you know what, like let's work within the constraints, not try to spread myself thin, and just like go back to that kind of like, yeah, like what have I learned, what do I like I have a certain amount of money for this, how, instead of like trying to stretch that as far as possible, how can I do this so that I can put my director hat on, it's not gonna fall off. And you know, so I enjoyed making this film in that way. And like for me as a multidisciplinary artist, like the making of it and the visual storytelling is weaved into the writing, which is weaved into the editing. Like everything's the same to me when I'm storytelling. So that's just how I try to approach my work. As like, ideally the hat should feel like one lovely, well-decorated hat that does not fall off. But yeah.
But sometimes we need a little extra strap under the chin.
Yeah.
As unattractive as it may look.
Money. Nice expensive strap. Yeah.
I want to know, because I am not creative in any way. Like, I mean, in art class, the teacher would go around and say, very good, excellent. And he'd come to me and say, oh, nice effort. It's okay. I'm not scarred. It's okay. But I am fascinated by the creative mind and the creative spirit, quite frankly, because the spirit moves everything else. I want to know how old were you? Well, we know you were like a prodigy of some kind.
I don't know about that,
But how old were you when you took this seriously enough that switch kind of moved, maybe not all the way, but moved from I like playing dress up in my fairy costume to I want to do this seriously, or at least do it enough that it led to something more serious?
I think, so I had the privilege of attending a performing arts high school, and I feel like that was when I learned that I was like, oh, you can go to college for theater? I didn't know that was a thing. And so I think that speaks to like, you know, privilege and representation, because I was able to see other people doing that track and go, oh, I can do that too. But not everyone gets that opportunity. So I think, you know, I knew when I was really young that I loved being creative. I was like, I'm going to be a journalist or a singer or an actress or whatever. But it wasn't until I saw people really doing the career path track that I was like, oh, I could do that for my job. Oh, okay. But yeah, I got to see other people do it, and then I was able to follow in their footsteps.
Well, for me, my mother grew up in a movie theater and loved the golden age of Hollywood. and used to save movie posters. My mother's an immigrant, and she grew up in Jamaica, and her father had what they called a canteen. So she was in the movie theater all the time. So I think my love for movies, I mean, I really think she's the filmmaker, she's the storyteller, because the range of movies that she loved, I don't think there's an actor my mother can't give you the history on. She's no longer here with us, but she loved Hollywood. But I went to a Catholic school and had a nun, Sister Barbara, that got a little tired of me always being in her office writing my name 500 times because I was talking too much. So one day she said, "You want to do a play?" And I said, "Sure." So she let me do a play for Easter about the bunny rabbit. And then she just stayed on me, and then I did my first full production when I was in the 7th grade about Santa Claus. And then I went to a high school where they dubbed me Doogie Howser because I always had that camera on my shoulder. But I think what was almost, it didn't matter what anyone said because my mom was always whispering, "I don't know how, but you'll get there. I don't know how, but you get there." But I think my teachers really just didn't want me to be disappointed. You know, they just didn't understand or couldn't foresee. Even though Eastman Kodak is in Rochester, New York, Eastman has a house there, they just didn't know how I was going to get out of Rochester and make that dream come true. But I think that it's really important that there's something called Halakhic norm. It's called divine providence. And I forget the name of the rabbi who wrote it. But he said when you have a desire in your heart to do something, it's divine providence. And you must fight. You must fight to fulfill that purpose. So that was my motto, you know, to get here. I didn't know if I was, but I knew before I died, I just had to make one short, just try. So I did. And we all did.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm similar to you in that I wanted to include Little Baby Robin at the end for one because it's hilarious, and I thought everyone, you know, watching it in a film festival would see themselves in it. That's me as a baby. And so I can't even remember since I was like, you know, crawling, walking, speaking. I was like, I'm gonna be an actress. I am an actress. I would, you know, put on ridiculous outfits and force my family to watch me put on shows. I studied acting in college, and I was an actress for a long time. But making this transition to directing, I think, has always kind of been there. I was a goody two-shoes kid, but I would get in trouble all the time for dominating the dress-up station in kindergarten and like not letting kids wear what they wanted to wear. And I would literally be like, "No, Jonathan, you're wearing this coat and you're playing the doctor today, okay?" And my mom would get called in. They were like, "Robin is bullying people at the dress-up station. Like, she's being very bossy." And, you know, looking back, I had acting teachers tell me in college, "You're going to be a director." And I was like, "No, I'm an actor." And so I think even that little clip at the end, there is a director's voice. I say, "You have to take a bow too. You were in half of it." I think there's always been a director in me, and I've silenced her for a long time in order to act. And it was such a joy to come at directing from an acting perspective because, as you said, a lot of directors don't like actors or don't like working with them, and as an actor I've worked with many of those directors. So what was most important for me was to create a safe space where everybody felt comfortable to play, to make mistakes. There's a lot of darkness and a lot of sexiness in the film, and it was very important that everyone felt safe just on a physical level, but also, you know, artistically, spiritually, and to be able to create that environment where the actors surprised me with each take was just like so fulfilling to me because that's the director I've always wanted to have as an actor.
Likewise and similar for me. I believe my first memory actually was watching Beauty and the Beast for the first time in theaters with my mom. So I have always felt, looking back on my childhood, I was always that kid that was like either convincing my friends to like let me direct them in a play or a reenactment of our favorite movies. It's a little funny saying it now since my role on Andy Kaliope is probably the least creative of the bunch beyond story notes and yet being more of the foundation, I guess you could say it, or the film's unofficial mother in terms of like making sure that everyone's safe and everything's efficiently like there and keeping everyone on schedule with a background like that. But I want to say that I probably made the decision subconsciously and launched my film education, which there's more nowadays in terms of resources that are out there, but fortunately when I was in high school, the New York Film Academy existed, so I was very lucky that I was able to like have the audacity to like teach myself how to write a screenplay and be able to enroll in like a film camp and make my first short like soon after that at the age of 14. And wouldn't trade it for the world because what I had wanted to do at the time was like to create empowering films for families and young kids especially. And what is this film that I did that where it was definitely the muscle in terms of keeping everyone on track exactly within that genre. So likewise, thank you.
So, New York Women in Film and Television, right? I have to ask the question because I think that as an organization, we do a wonderful job of this, and it's an intentional purpose of ours. We know about Sister Barbara, but we all need someone. We all need, whether you want to call them a mentor, whether you want to call it an inspiration, whether you want to call it someone who held it, I like saying, who held the door open for you. But also, how, and maybe you're not there yet, maybe you're working it out because, you know, we all have to get there in our own time. How do you intend, or how do you hold the door open for others? Tough one.
Take a beautiful question. I don't have an answer yet, just saying it's beautiful.
Take a moment.
I have an answer.
Yes.
I think you have to be vocal as hell. I think you have to be honest. I think that you have to be on the nose. Because, as I said, if it weren't for... I have been trying to get Color of Love edited for a really long time. People had issues with my dialogue. People wanted to question the story. Directors, writers, we direct from what we know. We write what we know. Color of Love is what I know. I know those people. It's real to me. What I wanted to do was hold a mirror up and let you all see the reflection. So it's imperative for me, if that door gets open and I have an opportunity, that I bring them all with me. Because a good producer knows there's an audience for everything. So why are people saying they can't fill seats for this and no. Aaron Spelling is a genius. He said it. He didn't like half the stuff. He didn't like half the stuff he put out there from an interview I saw, but he knew there was an audience for everything. So if the universe allows it that I can greenlight, they all come because you have an audience. They have an audience. There's viewers. Everyone wants to see themselves. So we have to create that opportunity, and we have to be loud about it. We have to be forthright about it. We have to be stubborn and fierce to make those doors open so everyone can see themselves.
I want to add to that, since I agree with a lot of that, but we are completely in a watershed moment where it does not matter if you're a color, it does not matter if you are a woman, it does not matter if you have a disability. Cinema is a beautiful tool in terms of the ideas and the conversations we can start through our art, but for the longest time, it has not been the most inclusive space. I know for me personally, when I was starting out, the Easter Seals Disability Film Challenge was like literally non-existent at the time, and there were a lot less initiatives like that, or like other labs and whatnot that are out there for marginalized voices. So it would be the kind of thing where I certainly got told it a dozen times, as has Rachel, my collaborator, or Colin, one of our actors. Oh, you can't do that. You have a beautiful voice, but you can't dance. Well, it's a dance callback, so you're not getting casted. Oh, you can't answer phones in a production studio or here on a walkie. Are you sure this is really the business you want to be in? And it's ridiculous. It does not matter where you fall in terms of the underrepresented story is that we could be telling if we only have the right people, not just in front of the camera with these stories and this artistry to tell, who want to be at the table, but behind the camera too. So all I could say is follow my lovely leading lady's lead. It is not that hard, whether it's during a pandemic to supply clear masks and that will protect your team, but also allow for someone who might not be able to converse otherwise to be a major part of your crew, or choosing a set that's inclusive. Don't say no to those that could possibly help everything you profess to be as an artist in terms of repping and telling the stories you believe in and feel that you should. If you're going to try to be an ally to a specific group, you have to walk the walk and go every mile that you can. Money and time, not existent, because, I mean, it is very easy to do some of these things with even like a zero budget.
Can I piggyback off of what you said? Because
Go
we're
for
saying
it.
the same thing. I've always wondered how people could shoot. Like when I was growing up in Rochester, I would wonder, how can someone shoot a TV show taking place in New York City and not include the melting pot? So, as a producer, if you're a producer and you're a good producer and you're shooting a film taking place in New York City, okay, and it's the city, the center of the city, the nucleus of the city, you have got to include Asians, Latinos. And when I say Asians, I'm talking about all of them. The entire Asian community. Chinese, Thai, Cambodian, everybody. You have got to include black people. And black people range. There's 57 countries in Africa, and all of them are right here in New York City, okay? And black people come in over 100 shades of complexions. And people don't seem to know that. And the reason why I bring that up is because when I was at NYU, they would always say, black skin, and I would say, you do understand that there's a range. And I had to prove it to them. And when I proved it to the cinematography teacher, he was like, oh my God. I said, so stop telling people black skin, because black skin ranges from very white to very black. So you can't say black skin. You just have to say skin. Okay, and there's different tones, so on and so forth. So you have to include everybody. And that includes disabilities. Okay, that includes everybody, and forgive me if I didn't use the proper terminology.
You are. It's the disability community is the bigger
communities.
umbrella. I tend to say deaf and disability community because
Okay.
the deaf community, it doesn't always identify with the disability community, so it's kind of under the banner.
But to support what she said, like, as someone who's walked through the streets of New York City, there is a deaf and disabilities center on 23rd Street between 7th and 8th. How could I pass that every day and not think to include?
And it's been there since the 60s or 70s,
Yes.
FYI, because I grew up in the neighborhood. I'm
Okay,
old
so you
enough
know
to
what I'm talking about. How can you produce and not include the Orthodox community? How can you not include, how could you shoot a film in Brooklyn and not include the Orthodox community, the West Indian community? So I'm sometimes wondering, like, what are these people thinking? Now I understand if you're doing maybe a family, because in my film, well, no, in my film, yeah, I have Asians, I have Latinos, I have a black, I have white. I don't have deaf and disabilities. And not that I was aware of. No, actually, I think my sound guy did have a hearing problem. And forgive me if that wasn't politically correct.
It's okay. I sometimes use that terminology as well.
So I just think that we are in a place where if we can have open, honest dialogue like this and nudge each other to make certain that we are being inclusive, then we can make that change. But we have to speak about it, and we have to speak about it with passion so people take it seriously.
It's also worth noting that a lot has changed in the last 2 years, where I can really only speak for female actors in the disability community, but there are new professions that have risen up, whether it's an intimacy coordinator to help women through scenes that might involve nudity, men as well, in terms of feeling safe, or an access coordinator, which does similar things for a disabled person and some accommodations, which has made it easier than it's ever been for us to have these conversations. And to quote a really good friend of mine who works in the industry and is like a junior level exec producer himself, this is tends to be a who you know business in order to get your foot in the door. So you can't have the mentality of getting to that place that you've been working for and slamming the door behind you. Whether it's the people you came up with or the next generation, if one of us succeed, we all succeed. And the more inclusive and the more we bolster and raise each other up and let our voices and our artistry in any profession and our ideas be heard and collaborate, the better our work will be, and the more we'll be able to have the conversations we want to have and inspire.
Great, thank you. So our last question, because then we're going to watch your film. So don't go anywhere after this. No potty breaks.
The awards are after the film, so if you want your awards, you have to stay and watch.
Hey, you'll take your potty break after we watch the film. Next projects. Just go in order. Next project.
I'm writing something about my grandmother.
Love it.
I'm contemplating it.
Even better.
My husband and I are working on our first horror film.
I just finished producing finished production for a feature film, and I am actually in producing another LGBTQIA plus film that's coming out next year.
Awesome. Excellent.
I've been writing a feature. I don't know if I want to make it, but I want to write it, so just going to enjoy the process on that one.
Okay.
Our team has already met. We're brainstorming. The same team from Salud, which we're very, very lucky. I feel so happy to have been on the part of the Women's Weekend's Film Talent and to work with such a team that that weekend ended. We theoretically don't ever have to really talk to each other ever again, but we are still in close contact and still brainstorming because we had such a great experience. And kind of just to that point on the last note of creating opportunities, and I'm really grateful for a program like Tracy and Katrina who created that program 5 or 6 years ago. Just two women were like, there's a little bit of a gender imbalance here. What can we do? And give people these opportunities to get their foot in the door in the industry and have a short that they can send out to festivals and be like, hey, I did that. Yeah, in a weekend, hire me. And to try out new roles and to learn new skills and stuff like that. So I think kind of just to put a button on that point of not even just getting in the door and then not shutting it behind you, but having a crazy idea for something that is inclusive, and then people will yes and it. Mm-hmm. And looking people in the face and being yeah, I want to do this, and someone will be we'll donate cameras, we'll donate space, don't worry about it. And that's exactly what happened. So dream big and tell people, kind of to your point, tell people and be loud about your ideas. I think it's great.
The question's what's next?
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Well, your film is next.
But seriously, if you have to go to the restroom, I'm a very big believer, just go to the restroom and I'll just give you a screener link and the password. It's cool. I have my cards. It's fine. But yeah, what's next? This is my plug. I have flyers. Please come. If you're intrigued about Spam the Canned Meat, I have this whole filmed theatrical production. I had a crew, and it's a fully edited, but it's a theatrical production I premiered last year. Now it's a film, fully subtitled in Korean, and also It's going to play at Flushing Town Hall. It is not on their website. You have to get the link from me. But we have food sponsors for it, so there's going to be like all these restaurants giving out Spam dishes, and it's going to be a good time. So that's on the 24th.
I
You
just
should
had
join.
Spam for lunch. So that's
Yay! Yeah. I mean, it's an ambivalent history of Spam as it relates to the Korean War and World War II, but please come out. Yeah.
Well, my entire team, myself included, are either in active production or early development stages with a bunch of things. But our big announcement and notable effort that's worth chatting about is the key team reunited to do another film for the Easter Seals Disability Film Challenge this past March, which was a predominantly BIPOC, all disabled-led LGBTQ romantic musical, because the theme this year was romance. So the other monster of the industry on the other end of the spectrum. And we're actually going to be screening at Heartland as part of the Indie Shorts Fest this July.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. If you could take your seats, we'll watch Handwritten, the whole thing.